Hello, welcome to the Horti-Culturalists. I'm Matthew Lucas.
And I'm Stephen Ryan, and we post every week on a Friday, so don't forget to hit subscribe and the alert button so that you'll keep up with our adventures.
And do remember, if you've got a burning horticultural question for Stephen Ryan, put it in the comments below. Tell us where you're from in the world, and he, not I, will answer it in 30 seconds. No, in 60 seconds in our shorts every Monday.
I'll do my best, and let's not make it too short a time scale.
No. Now, Stephen, we're in the leafy glades of your garden.
Again, yes.
Again? Why?
Well, it's all to do with the plant behind us, basically, bamboo.
Very handsome bamboo. Now,
Yeah.
we've covered bamboo before. Don't be afraid of it. I'll link that video up here. So what else have we got to say about bamboo, Stephen Ryan?
We're going to talk about the death of bamboo, in a sense.
Oh. Is this like the death of the novel?
Yeah,
the
no.
death of film?
No, but it can be the end of a whole race of bamboo. What people don't realise is that bamboo is finite in general, and many bamboos die after flowering.
Right. Are you telling me there's a bad outcome coming along?
Well, not for this one, I hope, for many years to come. But what we're going to look at is a bamboo in my front garden that is in fact starting to flower. And it is generally, with the larger bamboos, the end of the cycle. So,
Otherwise known as death.
yes, otherwise known as death. And it can be a quite long, protracted, drawn out death. And you and I were in the Botanic Gardens quite recently in Melbourne, and I noticed that they had big stands of one of their bamboo that was all flowering and dying. I got home and then I thought, now hold on a second, I have that same bamboo in my own garden, and in fact from the same source, because my clump was originally a division that I bought from the growing friends of the Botanic Gardens in Melbourne. So mine is identical clonally to the one in the Botanic Gardens, and I thought, I better check.
Better check.
Yeah.
And
It's doing it a bit slower because we're in a cooler climate, so it hasn't sort of kicked in like the ones that the Botanic Gardens have. But yes, there are stems starting to flower, so that is the slippery slide to the end for that particular bamboo.
well, we better go and have a look. But before we do, let's just tell everyone, what is this fabulous one behind us?
Well, as far as I know, this is Phyllostachys bambusoides, and it's one of the larger growing. It is a running bamboo, but it hasn't shown any propensity to run yet, but any moment it could.
It could run for the hills.
Yeah, and it can get very large, and it's comparatively cold hardy.
And if we swing cleverly around here, there is another clump of fabulous bamboo.
Yes, well,
And
this
what's
one's quite different. This one here is Himalayan weeping bamboo.
Beautiful.
And it's a lovely clumping bamboo, so it won't run, but the clump eventually gets quite large. So
That's a bigger clump than this one, ironically.
yes, well, and it's a slightly older plant as well, so it's been in there for quite some time. So that's the other thing people need to understand, that clumping bamboos still move sideways, and you need to allow for the potential size of the clump when you plant it, because it will just keep going sideways. If it's, it's like trying to stop a lava flow, you just can't, and it's just going to keep doing its thing. So if you're buying bamboo, you not only need to know how tall it's going to grow, you need to know whether it's a runner or a clumper, and you need to deal with it appropriately. But you also need to know how big the clump is likely to get to in your own garden, so that you're not pushing over the fence or whatever with a clumping bamboo.
All right, well, I think we should go and look at yours in the front and
Yes.
just assess the situation.
Oh yes, let's go and have a look.
Let's go. Well, Stephen, now we're in the front garden, so we
Yeah.
haven't got to the dying bamboo yet, but
Yeah,
before
we're building
we do,
tension.
it's like a thriller.
Yeah.
Who's going to die? And it's not this one.
No.
But before we get into yours, what about a bit of an overview of bamboo generally? So
Right.
where's it from? What is it? What's its range?
All right. Well, bamboo is quite literally a woody grass. Although having said that, there are even one or two bamboo genera that aren't woody. So it's murky, I have to say.
As all things are.
Yes, botanically things just don't sit neatly into little boxes, unfortunately. But you could say that the vast majority of woody grasses, there's around about 91 accepted genera within the bamboo group, and there's thought to be in excess of 1,000 species of bamboo worldwide. But having said all of that, we think Asian when we think bamboo.
Yeah. I was going to say, I'm just assuming Japan,
Yeah,
China,
China.
Southeast Asia.
Yeah, and that is a bit of an epicenter, I have to say. But they also extend, of course, right through the tropics. There's bamboos in Madagascar, there's bamboos in Borneo and all through the Indonesian archipelago. They extend down into a few northern Australian species. We're not
Really?
rich in bamboo, but yes, we do have some bamboo species in Australia.
Didn't know that.
And of course, the Americas also have bamboos.
Which I didn't know either.
Yeah. So
What, North America or South?
there's one or two that are in sort of southern parts of North America, but the vast majority of species of bamboo from the Americas tend to be South American, and there's a genus down there called Chasquilla, which is unique in the bamboos because anybody who's ever cut the stem on a bamboo or a culm knows that they're hollow between the nodes. The Chasquillas, as far as I know, are the only group of bamboos that have solid stems, so they don't have those gaps in between the nodes. So, and there's a whole range of those, and I have to say, as a group, bamboo drives taxonomists and botanists nuts because of their flowering pattern. Many of them have never flowered since they've been discovered. So until you flower a plant, you can't always be sure of its affinities, although with DNA and things now, we're actually able to circumvent that to an extent. But there's still plenty of bamboos out there that are probably under a name that is somewhat tentative, and they may well end up being shuffled around yet more once they start to flower and the DNA's been done.
Fascinating, fascinating. So obviously from what you've just said, there is a massive range of climatic conditions.
Oh,
so
yeah.
as they say, there's a bamboo for everyone.
Well, there is, and you know, as we've said in previous videos about this group of plants, there's sort of two basic groups. There's the clumpers and the running bamboos, and you have to deal with them in different ways. But amongst that sort of rather broad sort of categorization, there are lots and lots of variations, and because of the climatic zones that they come from, there certainly are bamboos that you can grow in Canada. There's plenty of bamboos that are hardy in England. There's tropical bamboos that do fabulously well in Southeast Asia but wouldn't grow in other parts, and nor would the cold ones transfer to there. So you have to pick the bamboos that will do well in your climate, unless of course you're taking zonal denial completely into consideration. I do have one in the garden here that struggles a bit, and that's Mexican weeping bamboo, which is one of the world's magnificent bamboos if grown well. Mine is out by my back pond, and it's all right, is about all I can say of it. Well, Matthew, here is my Mexican weeping bamboo. Yeah, it's not exciting. I mean, you know, we all try and do what we shouldn't do, and this is just that little bit too cold sensitive for the Macedon climate. It grows beautifully in Melbourne, and it's actually quite a heat tolerant bamboo, so it's good for the hot and dry. But it really, every winter it gets really quite sullen looking and sad. And
A sullen bamboo.
yeah, and it's one of my life's great disappointments is that I can't really grow this plant well. So it's still here, but yes, I've seen well-grown specimens of it, and it can be absolutely exquisite because you get these huge arching culms with these very fine leaves on it, and from a distance it's sort of like, I don't know, bright green foxtail-y effects. You've got this fabulous soft arching effect.
Yeah.
So beautiful plant if grown well. Not so good in my garden.
Never mind, you tried. And what was its botanic name?
This is Otatea acuminata, the Mexican weeping bamboo. So it is one of the South American or Central American species of bamboo. So it just shows they're not all Asian.
No, well, let's leave the great regret of your life and move on.
Let's. In Melbourne, it grows beautifully.
Well, we should go and have a look at that. But before we do,
Yes.
let's get to the point of this video, which is death.
Death, yes.
Becomes you. Let's go and find the dead one.
Yes, well, it's not dead yet, but it's on its way out. So we'll have a
It's
look.
just over there. Okay.
Yeah,
Oh,
all right.
did we say which one this is?
Oh, this one is black bamboo, so that's Phyllostachys nigra. And of course, the truly black stemmed ones are also cultivars. The wild form of Phyllostachys nigra isn't actually necessarily dark stemmed.
Yeah.
So the dark stemmed ones are selections, and at some point, that one's going to flower, and that might or might not be within my lifespan, and we could lose black bamboo out of cultivation.
Well, let's pause that thought and get to yours. But also, I'm just going to swing the camera a little this way. Now, those dead leaves that we see here
Yes.
are, in fact,
Of another bamboo, and that's one of the Japanese ones, or actually I'm not so sure, it just sticks to Japan, but anyhow, one of the Asian species, and it's one of the thuggish running bamboos that one has to manage if you're going to grow it, called Sasa palmatum, and they have very big leaves, not quite the biggest of all of the bamboos, but certainly quite large leaves, and it's quite a tropical looking plant in the garden, but I do have to manage it because it does run like mad if we have a damp summer.
and I guess then the last thing to say is a lot of bamboos are brilliant for pot culture because you can contain them. Obviously, the pot will depend on the size of the bamboo. But
Yes, I wouldn't grow many of the giant timber bamboos as long-term pot plants, I don't think. And just keep in mind though, bamboo is quite hardy, and so it will last in a pot for many, many years. But once they become root bound, if they're not well fed, well watered and preened occasionally, they can look awful, and you might well want them to die, in fact. So if you manage your bamboos well in a pot, then they can look fantastic, and you will probably after a few years need to take them out of the pots, slice them into 2 or 4 pieces, plant them back again, and then you can keep going. And you would always do that in the late winter, early spring. So if you're deciding to divide a bamboo, that is generally the best time to do it. So in the southern hemisphere, I'd be doing mine in August, maybe early September, is when I normally lift and divide my bamboos.
excellent. All right, well, let's go and look at the dying bamboo.
Yes.
All right, Stephen, here's the thicket. So
Yes.
is this the bamboo?
Yes, this is the one that is potentially on its way out.
Yep.
This will be my first ever deceased bamboo that has flowered, and there's even flowers starting to form
yeah,
on
I
the
can see.
quite healthy looking pieces. But if you look right back in there, there's some stems that have already flowered profusely and are dying out. So these ones that are still happy, green and healthy are in fact on their way out because there are flowers starting to form on them.
Now, I guess
Sadly.
let's contextualize flower because it's a grass. So if you just imagine wheat or oats,
Yeah.
it's that, well, we'll show you,
Yeah,
but
well-
it's not like it's going to be covered in pink blossom and then die.
No, unfortunately, it
Because that would be something.
Yeah, but no, they go out in a whimper, not a da-da. There's no da-da about bamboo, unfortunately.
So let's peel it back then. Now, if a bamboo cannot flower for over a century,
Yeah.
so what's its sort of evolutionary strategy? Why does it only flower once and die? So is it a monocarp?
Well, I guess a lot of bamboos are. I mean, some bamboos do actually recuperate after flowering.
So not all of them
Not all of them do it. So it's a very big group of plants, and so they're all going to have slightly different strategies that they use. But those bamboos that do the mass flowering and dying do it for a very practical reason. If bamboo was like a lot of other plants that flowered every year, then anything that might eat that bamboo can build up to a critical mass so that they can actually eat virtually everything. Whereas if it does it once every 80 or 100 years, the mice or whatever it is that could well eat the seeds don't have time to build up quantity to clean up all that seed that's being produced. So therefore a mass flowering works in the bamboo's favour. Why it takes such huge periods of time, I don't quite know, and I don't quite understand why it needs that long, but that seems to be what works for the bamboos. So what will happen is this one will die, I will collect some seed, I will raise some seed. Because this one is a cultivar or a selected variety, it's actually Phyllostachys nigra Boryana, which is commonly known as tiger bamboo because it has sort of spotty, stripy looking stems
I'm just trying
on it.
to get some seeds for you.
There we go. So yes, how exciting is that?
So,
Not.
so sorry, what was the name of this one again?
Well, it's commonly known as tiger bamboo because it gets this sort of stripy, splotchy sort of stems on it.
Oh, yeah.
And it's botanically Phyllostachys nigra Boryana. And as a cultivar, although we can raise seeds from this plant, of course, like if you have children, you can have both the same parents, but the children will all be quite uniquely individual.
So let's talk about that then. So this is what the flower heads look like, and it looks very much like a grass head, strangely enough, because it is a grass. So how is it pollinated?
All right, the bamboos are wind pollinated. So when they all come into flower, the breeze will blow through and the pollen will be scattered around amongst the plants, and then it will then produce the seed.
So I guess because one species or type is going to bloom whenever, randomly, you'll never really get cross pollination between different species to have
Yeah.
hybrids?
It's a very rare thing to have hybrid bamboos, but they have happened. I know I've got one in the back garden that's a cross between, I think, a Phyllostachys and a Sasa. So there are hybrid bamboos out there, but you're right, because one species tends to flower and there's big gaps between the flowering, it's not that common for bamboos to be synchronicity involved, and so therefore getting a hybrid one is quite rare.
Now, you've got a lot of bamboo in your garden because it serves different purposes. So you can have bamboo in shade, you can have low-growing bamboo, you can have tall bamboo, full-sun bamboo. So a lot of gardens around the world, a lot of gardeners, whether they're tropical, cold, whatever, use bamboo.
Yeah.
And it's quite important. What are you going to do, Stephen? This whole clump's going to die.
Yeah.
What's your strategy?
A gap is an opportunity. So I will probably lose this over the next 12 months or so. I'll collect some seed and raise some seedlings and see if I can get something that vaguely looks like the parent plant. That's fine. I may, in fact, discard it before it actually fully dies, because they are pretty gross looking as they're dying. So I might get fed up with it and say, all right, well, you look pretty ordinary, so I won't let you go right through the whole process and I'll euthanize you. So I may well do that yet. And I'll have a whole pile of bamboo canes that I can use in the vegetable garden. Nothing will be wasted. And because the garden has quite a lot of different bamboos around, losing one isn't a huge thing. If I were to be using a clumping bamboo as a screening plant along a boundary fence, however, if that whole group of bamboos decided to flower and die, that could be quite a major issue, because suddenly I'd be exposing myself to the neighbours or whatever.
And you shouldn't be exposing
No,
yourself.
no, I really shouldn't. There's laws against that. So anyhow, so it can be quite shattering if a screen of bamboo fades out. But if this clump disappears, I mean, I'll lose a bit of height in this part of the garden for a time, but I can very quickly plant something else, and it may be another bamboo. I might move on and plant something completely unrelated.
Because it will bring a whole lot of light to this area.
Yeah.
Now, the last question is then, so will every cultivar, this cultivar, be going through this flowering cycle now, wherever it is in the world?
Well, therein is an interesting conundrum. I'm not sure, you know, the story is that that's what happens. Obviously, because the Northern Hemisphere and the Southern Hemisphere have a different seasonal cycle, are they all going to flower here in our autumn and be collapsing in Northern Hemisphere spring? I don't know. So in fact, it would be really interesting, because we've got this particular cultivar going to flower here in Southern Australia now. I'd be interested to hear from some of our viewers what is happening with this particular bamboo in other parts of the world, because we may be able to either debunk the supposed story, or we may actually get proof that it actually does happen. So it'd be nice to know.
Or it might die in autumn in the Northern Hemisphere.
Yeah, it might take a little longer. I mean, this plant here, clonally grown from the one in the Botanic Gardens in Melbourne, where it's a bit warmer and more coastal, they're all virtually dead now. We saw them only a couple of weeks ago and there's not a leaf left on them. Mine is only just going into full flowering now, so it's some months behind the ones in Melbourne, but it is the same clone.
Yeah.
So I don't think they're all going to flower absolutely synchronicity like.
In synchronicity.
In synchronicity. So that's my theory.
Okay, let's talk seeds then. So have you ever propagated bamboo from seeds? So two things. Have you done that? And second thing, do you think in your climate there's a chance that obviously a ton of seeds are going to drop, that they'll just naturally germinate in your climate?
All right, well, you've asked me about 3 questions in one, but that we'll answer them. Yes, I have raised bamboo from seed before, and it's comparatively straightforward. I just sow it on a good quality potting mix, just sprinkle a little bit of gravel over the top of it. It will normally germinate quite quickly.
Like grass seeds?
Like grass seeds. So treat it like a lawn, basically. So I have done it. I did it with one of the clumping bamboos a few years ago, Fargesia nitida, that flowered for me in the garden here. And all the stock I had for sale at the nursery also flowered and died, and I had to throw it all away, which was painful. So yes, it's easy enough to raise from seed. So yes, that's one. Secondly, yes, I will probably raise some of this, and there's a very good chance some will come up from seed in the garden. Whether it'll come up as a lawn-like affair will be dependent on weather. So if we get a nice damp spring, we could in fact get a whole germination of baby bamboos come up here. I did get A few of the Fargesia popped up of their own accord in the garden after the original plant died. So yes, there's every possibility that I will get some baby bamboos come up here, but they may not be identical to the parent.
So that's the other thing then, I guess, with all of that, although it's self-pollinated by wind, there is going to be a huge genetic variation.
Oh yeah, look, there could well be.
So there could be a better, but you might have the Stephen Ryan bamboo after all.
Well, I could. The only issue with that though, Matthew, is that of course it's going to take some years for the bamboo to get big enough culms from seed to start seeing the characteristics. So I might have to live a long time.
Well, you will, Stephen, you will.
Yeah.
Gardeners live forever. How long will it take to mature then?
Look, it would vary depending on the bamboo species, but I would say with a big growing bamboo like Boryana, to see whether I've got something identical to the parent plant or something even better or something ho-hum and boring, which is just as likely to happen, I have to say. In fact, the vast majority will probably not be of particular interest. I could be looking at 10 to 15 years or more before I can be confident as to whether I've got something worthwhile. And you may have to grow an awful lot of seedlings to actually get enough genetic variation to find that really good one. So hence it's not actually a very, very good pursuit to breed bamboo cultivars.
No, and I guess then this comes back to the point that, for example, your original point that you bought this as a division of the one in the Botanic Gardens, because I guess most of these varieties were discovered in the wild with their variation, and then they were divided and da-da-da-da-da-da. So...
So, I would suggest that maybe most bamboos in the wild aren't quite so profligate with their flowering period. It might be a little bit more staggered in the wild, but certainly when you've got a clonal form, it looks like they will all come out to flower more or less at the same time.
Okay, well, I just want to ask you about something that this bamboo is doing around the corner, which seems to contradict everything that we've just said.
All right, let's go and have a look.
Now, Stephen, we have before us what seems to me a complete contradiction in that the bamboo is doing what bamboo does and it's sending up new shoots.
Yes, but notice how wan and miserable and skinny and what have you that is.
Well, I don't know, because I don't know what they normally look like with this
They normally come out of the ground like this big, fat, thick thing. So the culms come out of the ground the diameter that they're going to be.
Oh, right.
So that's not going to go anywhere. So it's sort of like the bamboo's final little effort to sort of...
a last try.
Yes, and it's not going to go anywhere. Once the nutrients have been sucked out of the rhizomes by the flowers and, setting of seed, little things like this are more likely just to then fade away. So, so there's no sense of that being a nice big fat culm. It's just this wan little thing.
So it's not the saviour of the clump?
No, I'd be very surprised. And if it were, a little weak thing like that might take years to build up a decent clump of bamboo again anyway, so you'd be better off to start from seed, really. So there you go.
Well, Stephen, luckily you've got some fabulous bamboos that aren't dying. Now, we've covered this one before. What is that one?
That's Phyllostachys vivax Aureocaulis, one of the golden stemmed bamboos, which is just stunning. And this one here is a Himalayan Horti-Culturalists, the blue bamboo.
That's stunning.
It's lovely. And so the colours of the culms are just absolutely fabulous. And this one's a clumping bamboo. The Phyllostachys, of course, is a runner, so I do have to manage them slightly differently. Yeah.
Now, I'll put a link to all the bamboo videos that we've done below, so you can see we've made a video about cleaning that one.
Yes.
How to choose a bamboo. Also, actually, the fact that the bamboo that's unfortunately dying is actually under a eucalypt. And so we made a film early on about what to plant under eucalypts, and bamboo is one of them.
Yeah, exactly. So what a useful group of plants.
Yes. Well, I think what we might do down the track is just maybe revisit as a short to see how the seedlings have come along of that bamboo.
Yeah, what a good idea. That'll just push me along to make sure I do collect some seed and sow some.
Yes. But Stephen, hopefully next week's video won't be about death.
No. It'll be about resurrection, obviously. So we'll go in another direction.
We will. But until then, if you want to know what we're doing, you'll have to hit subscribe. We do post every week on a Friday.
And don't forget our Monday shorts. So if you've got a question you'd like to ask me, I will try and answer your questions in 60 seconds, and we post those on a Monday.
We do indeed. But until then, take care, and we'll see you next week.
Bye all.